El 14 de junio de 1982, las tropas británicas finalmente ingresan en Puerto Argentino y se firma la rendición argentina. El general Mario Benjamín Menéndez, jefe de las guarniciones argentinas en las islas, le informa a su par británico que solo puede responder por sus unidades en Malvinas. El general Moore insiste en la necesidad imprescindible de interrumpir las acciones y Menéndez le reitera su falta de control sobre la Fuerza Aérea y la aviación naval, pero le garantiza que no efectuará ningún pedido de misiones. Moore comenta sus experiencias en San Carlos y Monte Kent, donde noche a noche eran bombardeados por los Canberra, y agrega que el día anterior había salvado su vida por un minuto al ser atacados por aviones A-4B. El conflicto deja a los británicos con su flota desmantelada y no es posible proseguir con las operaciones navales.
En ese momento, si alguien le pone un valor en números, y un avión que no valía más de $50.000, y una fragata CL-42 valía $550 millones puesta en el puerto. O sea que si uno hace números, realmente no resiste mucho análisis. La guerra económica la ganó la Fuerza Aérea Argentina, desde ese punto de vista, ¿no? Y la Armada con sus A4, porque eran aviones viejos que nadie calculó que tenían la capacidad de hacer el daño a una de las primeras flotas del mundo.
Como jefe de los comandos del ejército que se encuentran en las Islas Malvinas y ahora comandante del cuartel que antes ocuparon los británicos, ¿cómo calificaría usted la moral de los británicos en esta isla?
Bueno, la moral de los británicos en esta isla no era buena.
¿Cómo lo sabe?
No era buena por la vida que tenían dentro de acá del cuartel. Tenía una vida con todas las comodidades, y había alguna serie de elementos y de cosas que demostraban que no estaban en una actitud de combate óptima, a pesar de tener todo el material necesario para combatir. El soldado debe vivir en un ambiente austero, un ambiente totalmente sencillo y no en un ambiente de lujo por principio.
¿Uso de drogas?
Drogas no hemos descubierto.
¿Por qué, sin embargo, no se defendieron 120 hombres armados, más o menos, como pudieran haberlo hecho?
Bueno, cuando un grupo de soldados no defiende un lugar es porque no se lo quiere. Porque si verdaderamente se lo quiere, se lo debe defender con su propia vida.
Señor, ¿qué significa para usted estar en este momento en la Argentina custodiándola ya como un territorio reincorporado a la nación?
El orgullo más grande de mi vida.
¿Usted soñó alguna vez que lo iba a hacer?
Siempre lo he soñado y he tenido la certeza de que iba a hacer este trabajo.
Señor, usted no es de origen argentino.
No, mi padre y mi madre son de origen libaneses, pero me han educado como católico y como argentino.
Usted también pertenecía a la misma arma que su camarada muerto en acción, ¿no es cierto?
Exactamente, éramos, aparte de ser de la misma especialidad con el capitán Giachino, éramos muy amigos.
¿Usted tenía que ir a la casa del gobernador también?
En un primer momento el señor almirante Busser me había impartido la orden de ocupar la casa del gobernador. Pero a último momento, debido a que había sido observada presencia de tropa en el aeropuerto, y como tenía que recibir a mi regimiento, regimiento 25 de Infantería, y debía de abrir y dejar libre esa zona, me cambiaron la orden por el aeropuerto.
¿Qué hubiera pasado de estar usted y no el capitán Giacchino?
Hubiera pasado lo mismo, es decir, en los comandos es ley que el jefe va a la cabeza, y analizando el plan del señor capitán Giacchino y el que yo tenía, prácticamente era el mismo, y el procedimiento hubiera sido exactamente el mismo.
Cuando usted tenía frente a sí a los oficiales británicos ya rendidos, ¿usted dialogó con ellos? ¿Qué les dijo?
Bueno, yo dialogué con ellos, lo hemos tratado perfectamente bien, no como prisioneros, sino perfectamente bien, hemos comentado, pero la conversación indudablemente no ha sido fluida como pueden ser dentro de hombres de una misma nacionalidad. Pero en ningún momento hubo ninguna violencia ni nada por el estilo, es decir, perfectamente tratado bien.
¿Les advirtió usted, por ejemplo, de lo que pasaría si intentaran volver?
Bueno, he dicho que en esta isla las Fuerzas Armadas de la Nación Argentina la íbamos a defender a muerte y con todo. Y el que pisa esta isla y viene, aunque sea de visita, sepa que si se produce algo en ese momento, debe estar preparado para combatir y defenderla con su vida y ninguna duda.
Muchísimas gracias, Teniente Coronel. Muchas gracias.
And are there rounds coming down straight away, Tony? Can you build a picture? Can you describe the scene for me?
Hell. Absolutely horrendous. I think everybody on that hill was firing at me. That's what it felt like. I can't. The rounds, ammunition being fired, was unbelievable. The tracer, they were putting up illumination shells that were making weird noises. I think it was from the cases that were falling, and bullets everywhere. You could see the peat all being with the rounds hitting the peat, all struck, and it's all around you. Absolutely horrendous.
We shake out in single file because the sheep track is narrow. If you imagine a steep rock up to our right and then it falls away to the left. We come out from the rocks, the two lads in front are leading. I'm about fourth in line, there's a guy in front of me. And as we come down, literally about 25, 30 feet in front of us, there's a big rock and there's a gap between the rock on its own. Sheep track goes between that and the rock face. And an Argentinian soldier stands up and he actually says, "Hey, hombre." And he just, from the hip, lets fly a full magazine. Bearing in mind, they've got automatic weapons, ours was single shot. The two lads in front split, take cover. The lad, unfortunately, in front of me was killed. He took quite a few rounds. I was diving for cover and I got hit. The round went through my side, through my left lung, hit the front ribs and bounced back out again through my back. I ended up rolling down into this open patch, and then the next thing I know, up in the rocks above, there's 2 or 3 Argentinians who then start shooting down into me. Classic ambush zone. I'm in the kill zone. Start return fire back at them, and then all of a sudden the blood comes pouring out my nose, out my mouth. My lungs collapsed, so I just then lay there, put my head in my hands and think, hey Hope, here we go. Like, you know, I had rounds landing between me, I had one go between my elbow and my head, and the next thing then, the two lads that I'd basically tabbed across the island with come out from cover, brought themselves into the kill zone, grabbed me and dragged me into cover.
Saved your life.
Yeah, definitely.
On the 11th of June 1982, British troops in the Falklands were preparing surprise night attacks on a series of heavily defended mountains around Port Stanley. The Argentinians now realized that they were under attack. Rifle and machine gun fire, mortars and grenades rained down on the British troops.
It was a gutter fight in the dark, close quarter fighting. Argentines were fighting from behind rocks, a case of throwing grenades over rocks, going around, one man going, other men covering them. range of visibility really quite short.
Eventually, our section got pinned down by 2.5 machine guns close to the summit, and some riflemen. And for a while, we were actually, you know, they had actually gained the momentum and gained the initiative from us.
Three Para should have swept over Longdon, but there was a nest of conscripts around a 50 caliber machine gun halfway along it who said, "Nah, you're not taking this hill just yet." And that's all it took. I mean, you can be as hard as nails and as well equipped as you like, but if you come up against people who are prepared to stand their ground, you're going to lose, man.
I remember the moon being out, and I could see the silhouette of this mountain, and for some strange reason, it reminded me of like a haunted castle with a silvery sky behind it. It was quite bizarre. And I remember thinking, that's my nemesis, I have to conquer that.
I can remember my Sergeant Major turning around and saying, "If you've got anyone you might want to speak to." And I thought, yeah. And I know he was talking about, he said, "You might want to go and pray, because some of us will not see tomorrow, or will not see the sunrise." I know I did. I just sort of went, you know, been a bad boy, bad Catholic, I suppose. And, you know, can someone look after us tonight?
As I was walking, every step I could feel, every sinew, every muscle fibre strike up. I could feel the sweat coming out of each pores. My body was so alive. I've never ever experienced that before. Everything was alive, and I was just waiting for that bang.
The British were tired, cold, and hungry. They now faced the most challenging battles of the war.
It was pretty close, because guys were going down all around you. At one stage, we were going, me and another colleague were going up, and next thing he just dropped, and he'd been shot right in the eye there with a 50 caliber machine gun. No chance. He was totally dead.
The noise was incredible. The screaming of people giving orders being sort of overlaid by the screams of people who were hurt. The screams of people carrying out assaults and motivating themselves to go forward. And the noise was just tremendous. Everybody was firing. Everybody. It was at this stage that Corporal McLaughlin was given a command to actually, right, go and get our wounded, get our boys back, get up and go and get them. I moved out, and I found, or ended up at, next to a young guy called Neil Gross. Neil was obviously in some discomfort. We got him onto a poncho and we carried him as best we could. There were lots of people trying to carry Neil, lots of people. Because he was in an awful lot of discomfort. So much it was just really sad. It was actually his 18th birthday.
Neil Gross died soon afterwards. Two 17-year-olds were also killed during the battle for Longdon, and 19 other paras lost their lives.
The 600 men of 3 Para planned a surprise attack on Mount Longdon under cover of darkness. At its base lay an Argentine minefield, clearly marked today. In 1982, it was not. What followed was never filmed, but the battle for Mount Longdon has been reconstructed using the stories of the men who fought there.
We were told in no uncertain terms that some of us, indeed, would not be seeing the sunrise the next day. And I said ta-ra to a couple of my friends who, indeed, didn't see the sunrise the next day.
With the grim order to fix bayonets, the Paras advanced silently up Mount Longdon.
The initial advance towards the foot of the mountain was silent and without event until a corporal in B Company hit a mine.
The blast blew the man's leg off. All surprise was lost.
What came down was like blackboard illuminations as people woke up, got out their trenches, and started opening up with their various weapons. Realising we were in a minefield, as we were running to try and get to some cover, the fire was increasing all the time.
The 150 men of B Company leading the charge met a deadly hail of bullets.
I just kept going, kept walking into this hell in front of me. You either fight or you run away from it. It was an intense feeling of fear. My stomach was really knotted tight. My legs felt heavy and stiff. You suddenly sort of switch into this role of almost like a robotic machine fighting forward. Men going in, eyeball to eyeball, bayonet to bayonet.
Despite their weeks on the freezing mountain, the conscripts put up stiff resistance. After 3 hours of hand-to-hand fighting, B Company, spearheading the attack, was still pinned down by a heavy caliber machine gun.
Because they were so well established in these rocky positions, they simply could not be shifted. There were some very dark moments. Bearing in mind this was the most intense experience of battle that any of us had ever had. And there were moments when one thought, what the hell more do we have to do to win this?
After the fierce hand-to-hand night battle on Mount Longdon, the men of 3 Para were being pounded by heavy Argentine shelling.
These artillery barrages were very intense, and it was very, very frightening. In fact, I sometimes wonder, what was more frightening, actually fixing bayonets and walking up that mountain, or actually sitting there and having to take this bombardment. You don't have any control of your destiny, and it's literally lady luck, whether you survive it or not.
When he volunteered to collect new maps and a resupply of cigarettes, Denzel Connick's luck ran out.
I wanted to, in a way, selfishly, secure my own ration of cigarettes. That's when I got caught out in the open with a shell. So I ended up smoking a lot more than I expected, really. There was hardly any warning. It was just a rush of air, a screaming noise, and bang, that was it. Took off my left leg from the hip.
Connick was hit by a 105mm shell. The 2 paratroopers with him were killed.
The Falklands had tumbled down.
Well, the battalion had fought the battle of Tumbledown. The majority of the battle was over. It was essential that we took the mountain before daylight because the Argentinian artillery positions in Stanley, if they'd kept us on the mountain during daylight, they could have taken us out and counterattacked, knocking potentially the whole of the British forces back across the island and winning the war. So it was absolutely essential that we won that mountain that night. The battalion was stopped by an extremely heavy machine gun post on the end of Tumbledown Mountain. It had done enormous damage to the company before mine, and my company was called in to try and sort it out. Well, I led the attack on it, and we took it out, and we won that specific point. But I realized that we'd lost all our momentum. You know, we had our first wounded, our first Argentinian prisoners in our hands, and the boys stopped. I mean, we came to a grinding halt. We then came under severe sniper fire. So I took a couple of my men, and we went and took out the snipers. Unfortunately, the last one I didn't see, ran past him, and the one other man with me ran past him as well. He shot us both from behind. What concerned me was a number of incidents happened over a period of time when I returned, and I had what I call a cynical awakening. And I realized that what was happening was that they were adapting these images, censoring these images, and being very clever with these images to ensure that the whole international incident portrayed the incident that they wanted. It portrayed victors, not victims. It portrayed a joyous occasion that we should all celebrate and that we should all be very proud of. Now I happen to believe that we should be proud as a serviceman of having done such a good job. I believe that a lot of the principles and standards that I've been brought up to believe in are still quite correct. What I discovered was that I feel that the rulers weren't believing in those principles and standards themselves. That came out in the version of, for instance, on my return, no wounded were allowed, no press were allowed to be there to meet the wounded, which was step one. I then discovered that a certain number of wounded seemed to have been hand-picked because they had what was seen as the right image wound. You know, they had a limp, they had the action man scar, whatever, and they were then photographed. So the wounded...
You weren't?
Not the people who were badly burnt or lost limbs, or in my case, had a large hole in my head.
Mire, por lo que yo he aprendido, solo 2 países en el planeta, corríjame porque soy un hombre que vengo de un vástago ignorante, solo 2 países en el planeta enfrentaron al Reino Unido de Gran Bretaña, los zulúes y los argentinos. Yo pensé en la pija.
Olvidar, no sé bien que no podés, como la sociedad olvida.
¿Por qué no contragolpeamos todavía?
Bueno, porque nosotros pensamos, primero que también quizá una de las finalidades que persigue el enemigo es que nosotros perdamos un poco los estribos y contestemos ese fuego, lo cual quizá no tuviera demasiado resultado contra los barcos, pero denunciaran mucho más claramente nuestro dispositivo.
Señor, ¿hay aquí comandos o quizás colaboracionistas del enemigo en la población civil que puedan estar facilitándole esa tarea, haciendo señales a la flota?
Mire, yo entiendo que podría haberlos, pero lo conceptúo bastante difícil en cuanto a poderle dar blancos con precisión. Y creo que, digamos, a esta altura de los acontecimientos, el dispositivo nuestro, si no con total y absoluto detalle, es bastante conocido, o puede serlo perfectamente por el enemigo a través de la interpretación de fotos satelitarias. Y eso sí creo que el enemigo lo dispone.
¿Usted cree que el enemigo está esperando que lleguen esos refuerzos para lanzarse un ataque?
Podría serlo, y sería lógico, diría yo, el esperar a tener todas sus fuerzas reunidas para lanzar un ataque de real envergadura y con las mayores posibilidades de éxito. Sin embargo, también cabe señalar que el enemigo tiene que saber ya, también a esta altura de los acontecimientos, el precio que habrá que pagar por una acción de esta naturaleza. No se olvide, yo lo voy a reafirmar, que nosotros quizá no dispongamos de todos los medios técnicos que el enemigo dispone, pero tenemos un sostén, llamémosle así, o un impulso espiritual que es muy especial.